Thanks a lot for hopping on webinar 2. Uh, Today, we are going to focus heavily on training and prompting. A quick recap from previous conversations that we had in the webinar 1. If you are joining for the first time, I would really encourage you to look at webinar 1 as well, where we cover the basics of personal language model as well as the use cases. This one will go into pretty deeper detail of training as well as prompting. The intention of this one is to give a very good, deep understanding and overview of the capabilities and kind of the sort of the mindset as well. So without any further ado, let's get started. Last webinar, we have discussed AI is the new medium for digital communication. That's, I believe, where personal AI will play a big role in this idea of having a second yourself that trains on your personal data. I believe will be for everybody, and everybody deserves to have their own personal AI that is trained on them. One of the good analogies that seem to resonate with people quite a bit is training and using your AI like chief of staff. The use cases vary, but personal AI is currently best to think about drafting any outbound communications and any everyday communications, such as text or email or post or even brainstorming with yourself. 24/7 conversation, there are a good number of people who already deploy personal AI for 24/7 conversation. Autonomous ideation would be more around, working with yourself into your deeper for, getting more value out of it. So we discussed several different use cases last time around. This time around, our goal is to give a good overview of how to do update or upload the memory that personal language model trains on, as well as what are the best practices around it. We may not be able to, invest too much time into the UI elements and the application as such, which we will save for next webinar, which will be the third one, the last one, where we will cover integrations as well. The big goal. So I would like to start by saying the more you train, the faster you run. Unfortunately, there is no magic in this scenario. The reason is this is one of those, platforms where you would have to invest. The magic doesn't happen. It's not about instant gratification. It's about lasting gratification. So that's one of the key things to remember. The reason why personal AI would exist, from a very high level would be, if you are thinking, I wish there was a second me to save time. I'm out of office for auto reply to autopilot conversations where people can access me, as well as the capacity, which is this idea that we probably are not, capable of deep understanding and synthesis of all the knowledge that we have possessed in the past. So jumping into training my AI, the my AI representation is about your memory and your model combined, or simply to remember M&M, memory plus model. There is no model in personal AI space without the memory. Memory is what makes the model a model. The current version of the model we are running is model 2. We refer to as internally. We can publish, or we published actually a blog on model 2 and some of the details around the conversational capabilities, which you can access. Think about getting started with your AI is the initial upfront investment around 4 to 6 hours, depending on who you are and what kind of content that you would have. That's generally my suggestion, because if you were to come in and use my AI as a service, it's going to be a general model. So you would have to feed in personal data to get there. So a good practice would be to set a purpose, what your AI is for, to set an identity. Who is it representing? Is it you or is it your brand? And plan the personas. Personal language model comes with the segregation of data that you can manage within your own AI, which we'll talk about it. And have any of your historical knowledge upload into your personal language model. That all goes into my AI. It's a continuously evolving model, right? So the more you push the data, the greater it gets. On an ongoing basis as well, it may not be one of those pre-trained models where you deploy and you forget about it. I would encourage people to continuously reinforce the memory, because the beauty of leveraging personal AI is that you are continuously training it and reinforcing some of the facts and changing opinions and concepts as well. So please do continue adding memory once you deploy and launch it. So these are the general steps involved. What we put forward is a couple of examples where, myself personally, as well as some of the other brands are using AI for. The easier way to wrap around our heads is thinking about my AI in the aspect of scopes. Is this my AI just for me, which is my private needs, which is mostly generating the content or generating draft emails for me? In that case, yeah, it is just simply best served in the personal AI native applications. There is a desktop application, there is a mobile application. However, every personal AI comes up with its own API. So think about it as an API to CEO. You can use that with agents via Zapier right now, unless you're a developer, you can directly use API as well. The second way to think about it is my AI is not only benefiting me, but it is benefiting my team, my friends, my family. In this scenario, your AI is working alongside with you for either drafting communications for you or sharing knowledge for you on your behalf when you are not there, or even representing you on the websites and things of that nature. If you do think about your AI for your customers or your clients or your followers, your audience, that goes into publishing your AI for the external needs. That also is totally possible, and depending on how you would want to manage your branding on your websites and integrations and developers that are needed for advanced agents. So jumping into step number 1, which is setting the purpose. This is an example of an individual brand. And what I did was actually showing my real everyday use case and how I set my personas and how it is deployed. So I'll give you, 3 examples for each of the personas. My intention is, technically being available for my team as well as in my productivity everyday scenarios where, I get like 80% of work done with my own AI because pretty much everything is locked into my AI. Second thing is setting the identity. This is one of the most important pieces, which is if you want my AI to represent you or say me, and if my AI is representing me, I would set my AI name as my name, right? If you are creating a virtual avatar that, would want to work for you as an assistant, you would basically, create a virtual avatar and give a name. But the more important thing is the data that goes into the model will be, understood, to that identity. So anything such as like first person authored content, I or my, in the model will refer to Suman Kanuganti in the memory end model if I set my name to Suman Kanuganti, right? So I think that's one of the key important pieces. And the third thing is planning the personas. So how do we plan personas? One, just the understanding of defining a role, which I will show you an example of, and identifying what are the data sources you have to upload, right? And what are the target users for the personas. So let's jump in. The important things to remember for the persona is the primary AI, which is my AI, is the sum of all your individual personas. No 2 personas share the memory. Every memory is siloed within its own persona. So when you are talking to persona 1, for example, and if you are trying to fetch memory from persona 2, it wouldn't have that information. However, if you go to primary AI, it would leverage all the memory and the model composed in all these personas. So let's just consider this is my primary AI, Suman Kanuganti, that is representing me. I have the following personas. I have a personal persona where all the information in the personal is my identity. I have a chief of staff persona, which is all about my professional activities for reporting, drafting, writing, and generating content, mostly for my work. I do have a storyteller persona, which I actually share externally for media interviews, for PRs, for people coming in and talking to my AI, but at the same time doesn't want to give away too much of private information or information that I would share to my board. So you can essentially set access for each persona. I do have a seller persona for investor pitches. If investors are coming in and asking me diligence questions, I would basically leverage my AI to be able to answer those. Librarian for me is my second brain. So there are a good number of people who use personal AI as a second brain as well. which is all about information and knowledge and augmenting your thinking. So I will go details into 3 different personas that I leverage for. On the personal side, it's about personal identity. It's about memory bank. It's about facts and the preferences. And the beauty part is every preference or every memory you add as a fact, your conversations with your personal language model actually becomes even more favorable to you. And we'll cover some of the examples. But the data sources to keep in mind for the personal side would be things such as like autobiography, right? Or a resume, or your LinkedIn profile, or any of your professional background, hobbies, favorite foods. Think about all the platforms you have accounts for, such as OpenTable, Airbnb, Uber, airlines, etc. And what are those preferences that makes you unique? You can think about those as the foundations of just building a personal persona. The target users for this is myself, or even people who are very close to me, who are helping me do things on a day-to-day basis. The second persona we'll dig in is the chief of staff, mostly for professional use cases. These data sources would include anywhere from my business model documents, the technical details about personal language models, history of personal AI, anything that you would imagine. Some of the meeting notes that I take, on a day-to-day basis, such as like Zoom transcriptions or Notion documents, would also go in here, but it depends on which one I want my AI to be learned and which one not. The people who would benefit from this persona is mostly team, investors, and my board. I do have a AI with autopilot launch where my team uses. I do have another autopilot launch where the community uses. So depending on how you design your persona, you can choose your people and friends to share. The third persona is more like external, right? So one is just about me, and then we talked about the team, which is a small group. And this persona is more about, publishing a Suman AI out there for anybody to come and interview you, right? And you can think about this interview as, we talked about some of the use cases, job seeker interviews or recruiters, or, even simply getting your opinions or responding to some of the media articles and press that exists out there. So as long as the memory and your opinion on certain things are there, you could essentially leverage this and deploy it for external agencies, customers, followers, audience, and journalists. So those are the 3 primary personas. Now we can think from a business standpoint, meaning if your purpose and the intention is not individual brand, but a small business brand with a company that is serving teams and maybe niche communities. Here is another example that I've seen. One, the purpose in here could be more like cross-functional AIs for internal teams, where people can benefit by, having that knowledge and having that access without, trying to hop on Zoom all the time, or without simply having a general bot across all the company. You would have your AI, or my AI, organized at a high level, which represents your brand, which is probably like, your company's brand. Let's call it like Lumina Life. It's a fake company. I asked it, give me a fake company. And then in each persona, you can identify a specific either virtual brand or a real person's brand as well. So in this case, I've seen people implement specific departments into a specific avatars or into the people. So Jasmine would be the brand marketer. So she would be responsible for updating anything associated with representing the particular brand for media interviews. And Jake would be responsible for making sure all the technology, all the information that is needed for the specific clients and partners updated in persona too. And same thing with the strategists. So you get the idea, right? So you can imagine, a 100% company or a 10% company have like a higher level brand, but every employee could potentially have their own personal AIs to represent the entire company's brand. You don't have to do all 100 AIs at the same time, but even starting with core functions is a way to think about it. Cool. So that's the basics, and I would encourage everybody to take 10 to 15 minutes just thinking through how I would want to structure my AI. Because one of the things is once you do structure, once you have a good idea, then you have to put effort in getting the memory in. So it's worthwhile, to just have that framework in mind. So understanding personal language model. First thing first, Personal language model technically has unlimited memory, right? It's not dependent on how much tokens or context that you are passing in, very kind of in the context of LLM. PLM works with memory, and the memory can grow long, and it's not bound to the word limitations such as LLMs. Memory reinforcement. In other words, the AI is as good as your memory. If AI is making false statements, you may have to fix it and re-add and reinforce for learning. In the future, we will have mechanisms to download the memory and model. So it's important for you to know that yes, your memory is yours and your model is yours. We will have some open source transformers as well for expanding the scope of your memory ecosystem. There is versioning of the models, but it's not exposed to the user as of yet. So we'll have to figure out how to get it done. Remember that everything is in your control, meaning the output of personal AI model is as good as the input, because we are not pushing the data to your model. I think that's very important to understand. This is actually you are training, and it's a no-code tool where you can train it for yourself and deploy it for yourself. Yes, it is private to you. No memory is shared across any of the models. So also important to know, and it's owned by you, meaning we will not be using the data for any other purposes other than just simply modeling, and it's not a service, it's an asset for you. Jumping into memory and message. I would also encourage people to, do not worry about taking notes, because from here on, there is going to be good amounts of details. So it's more about understanding, the basics, and we can get into the details in the documentation, and everything will be available online. So memory and message. A message in a personal AI system is simply, a text message, right? It could be small, it could be long. But once you add message to the memory is when your personal AI model is trained. When you ask your AI or having conversations with your AI, you can, the response from the AI, you can consider that as a message. If you do want to reinforce, you can use that, generate a response from the AI and re-add that to the memory as well. So that's a relation between message and memory. They are not similar. They have each have their own purpose. And to add the memory, you would, choose specific persona and you would enter that information. The same functionality of sending the message and adding to the memory is available on the mobile app as well. If you ever send a message in the mobile app of personal AI, simply swiping right will add that to your memory. Importantly, reinforcing on the go, specifically if you are using AI to draft your messages, you can simply edit and send those messages in your communication to your AI or to other people, but you can re-add those to reinforce some of the concepts that you may have. I would also encourage people to add negative memory to prevent, hallucinations, especially if your scores are low or you're trying to determine what is my personal score, which basically sets the threshold of when your AI will respond and when your AI will not respond. So as you understand how your AI is performing with your scores, you can add things such as, I do not have, built-in personal AI integrations with Gmail yet. So that way it stays within the facts. The reinforcement also works similarly on mobile app. You can edit and you can send it. Foundational training. The intention of foundational training is to get across, okay, what should be my first 100 memories, right? So foundational training, you can think about just personally, to just begin with who you are as an individual. I think that's the best place to start because we know about ourselves very well. So you can, talk to your AI and add memories around your background, interests, preferences. This could be your LinkedIn profiles, like we talked about, or existing information that you may have. Use any of the question and answer, if you do have a personal brand, if you do have a personal brand website or your company brand website, question, answer, just take the question, answer, and then push it to your AI as a memory. Then it will start picking up. Any writing samples that you may have, your articles, your documents, blog posts would also be a good place to start because it's already existing content. Teach your AI about your brand too, which is, your website URLs, your podcast interviews, you can upload those. And specifically, when we share this deck out, we will have specific, step-by-step instruction on how to get the website URLs in and podcast interviews and, with best practices we will discuss today. So you can, so this one is about foundational training, like which is training on yourself. It's purely sharing an example of if you do have information, you can rewrite that information into first person. That's a best practice. And upload or push it to your AI. You can still consider as a second person, third person data can go in, but if the information is somebody else, you may have to be clear on what is the data that is representing you versus what is the data that is representing others. This is an example of question and answer. It can remember links as well. So, sometimes if somebody is trying to, ask for a link for webinar 1, webinar 2, you can simply, ask for it and my AI will draft a message for me. So training on facts is one of the easy, low-hanging things. Teach your AI your writing. So this could be more like a, second brain, my library use case, academic papers, professional reports, those things can go in as well. The upload files via local documents and PDFs is a good place to start. There's a Google Drive integration as well. If you have lots of PDFs and board reports directly in the Google Drive, that is the most preferred way to do it too. Specifically when you have PDF and where you can, convert using Google software and then use the GDoc link to push to the drive. Teach about your brand. We talked about it, brands, websites, podcast, PR interviews. Have patience. It's one of those things where once you start seeing the results, the output is exponential, right? And there's one of the upsides and the downsides. Upside is, the output is so good. The downside is it does take time. So it does require a little bit of investment like in yourself, because unfortunately that's the path that we chose instead of just giving you something that you don't know what the data is about. And your personal AI is your asset. So that's another thing. The key point in here is the model becomes more self-contained over a period of time. What do I mean by that? Initially, when you have 100 memories, it may still be using some of the external information to kind of construct a response for you. But the more you reinforce and the more you add memory, it will be more and more self-contained. So that's a key point. So it's going to be fun from this point onwards. It's going to be a good number of best practices for training and prompting. What's like do's and don'ts. I'll try to cover the key points and then you can dig into the details of the deck later at a later time when you have time. So let's begin. First thing, if you are uploading information that is authored by you, I would simply use the AI itself, take the information, ask the AI to rewrite your information in first person, and then add it to the memory. That way, there is no confusion on who said what, especially if it is authored content and if the purpose of your AI is representing you. And now, of course, when somebody asks me about me at Suman Kanuganti, it will pick up all the pieces of information and then make it nice conversational, based on my personality. When you do have other people's authored content that you want to remember, but you want to remember it as if they say it, then I would explicitly quote them. So Grant Bentley say, personal AI, covers 3 stages of life: learn, love, legacy. I really like this quote. So I add it and then I remix it sometimes, in my own brainstorming. So that's really important. But yeah, once you have it, then you can kind of combine your own knowledge into some of the people knowledge and specifically ask for content out there. Okay, always please add to the memory that are complete sentences and full context. Right now, the conversational memory is a short-term memory that will be used for conversations only. The long-term memory has to be full sentences, full pieces of information. So, rather than just saying spicy chicken, like you would want to add what exactly you're trying to tell it. So in this scenario, I added one memory. When I sick, I actually like to eat spicy food. And when people, talk to me in that particular context, my AI will draft, with that memory. In this case, James asked me like, hey, sick, I can grab some food. What would you like to eat? And this happens, more often than you would actually imagine. My EA uses my AI all the time to order me food. So it's pretty cool. Now, format and list. If you do have list, rather than simply, entering the list, I would enter the list. I would have, if you send it to AI likely is going to rephrase because it doesn't have any instruction what to do with it. When it rephrases, you can stack both the list as well as you can add the narrative format. The narrative format is really good for the language models. So any CSVs, if you can actually convert that into a list format and then push it in and add it to the memory, I think you will get better results. For example, in here, I just said 2020 and 2025, like what are the things that we're focusing? I added to the memory both my list as well as my narrated format, and here is the output. Like it can now tell everything about the history and the execution year over year, and all I did was those 5 words. Hashtags come in handy, really handy. You can use as many number of hashtags as you would want for the input. And for the output, you can specify hashtags if you want to ground into a specific topic. The uses of hashtags will come if you are trying to connect 2 different topics from 2 different subjects, but they are interrelated, but AI might not know as of yet. You may want to do that. By default, the memory transformers will extract the topics and entities that are in the content. So if it is already in the content, it's up to you if you want to ensure or maintain some of your hashtags at the high level. But if it is not, it's really relevant for you to connect those topics at a high level. It's not mandatory, but it's a best practice, very similar to how you would tweet or how you would maintain your notes and other documentation. Here is a good example. I essentially asked my AI to write a personal AI intro so I can email an investor in an active voice. And I use the hashtag blurb because whenever I enter key pieces of information that I want to use for an introduction, I use that input as blurb. So for the output, if I just ground that into blurb, then it will only use that piece of information rather than just, telling about personal AI differences with ChatGPT. So that's really cool. You can also use hashtags for dates. All the memory is time bound, but the model doesn't yet recall based on memory time, which is coming with its own. We have a predict model in the making, but for now, it's a good practice to have explicit dates and use the hashtags to ground for the retrieval as well. Here is a good example, when did I meet Larry Bock? I hashtag August 30, and then it can answer this question. This is another example, what did I do on so-and-so date? So best practices. I will share this, but if you follow these best practices, 99% of the time, you will get so much value, you'll be surprised. In most cases, personal AI is all about understanding because it's not a, pre-trained model. So that's where your help will be important. What to avoid? Avoid information that doesn't fit with the purpose because it basically confuses and you will have not so good results. For example, if your purpose is, you want to represent finance consultant but your memory has research papers from biochemistry, it does confuse the model. So set the purpose and stick to it. If you have a second purpose, create a second persona or create a second AI. There is documents that you can upload, but try to avoid tagging people in the documents. Just use the messaging for, who said what pieces of information. We already talked about it. Out of the avoid context, try to avoid adding to the memory. Junk. Try to avoid adding just junk. Now, interesting thing is, I think it does pretty okay in terms of handling the junk. But however, sometimes some of the topics, can give you some extraneous and unnecessary compute that is needed. So it's better to clean up and add memory as a general practice. We talked about the copy paste raw tables. I would get into either bullets on list format or narrative format and then add it. And you can use AI techniques to do that. So these are the things to avoid for sure. That's all do's and don'ts when it comes down to memory and model. A little bit about prompts. Prompts is one of the most beautiful things, right? Because now not only you can just ask your question, but you can instruct an AI for a specific thing. If you have ever already experienced ChatGPT prompting, you can think about ChatGPT prompting. You can also use with the personal language models as well. The most beautiful thing is because the context already exists within your memory, you don't have to go overboard as much as give specific styles and show the topics. In other words, you don't have to feed in the entire context to get the output because the context is the memory in the case of personal language model. Prompting tips, good prompt, bad prompt. There are like a whole bunch of prompting tips blocks that exist out there. All those could still apply to personal AI, except that, you don't have to, essentially pass in the entire data as part of the prompt. Here's a good example: generate a LinkedIn post about personal AI versus ChatGPT, in not more than 5 sentences, and use emojis along the way. Personal preferences. Specifically, if you are starting early on, you can think about it as like a recommendation engine and system, but basically, grounded within your own style. And since it has a little bit of knowledge about internet, and you will see that in the personal score, you can ask specific things based on your favorite restaurant. What could be what could be some important things that I can do? It also picked up the flavors of spices and dishes, which is, obviously as an Indian, I like them. So personal preferences get really interesting. One other use case is like new employee onboarding, like for internal teams. Once you do have information, people can come in and learn about, your company. And the entire documentation can be in there. So it becomes more like a conversational next generation, employee onboarding. Customer support. Currently we have Eve. Most of the people who try to understand how personal language model works, talks to Eve. And one of the things is like we still get like newer questions, and we still add new memory and reinforce the memory. So it's pretty awesome how much it has evolved over a period of time. Ongoing training. So this is the last topic, and we will have some time for the Q&A. Again, it's a continuous training model, so you can use it to your benefit and as an advantage, and automate pretty much like adding the memory almost on an everyday basis and automating the output as well. So one of the key things that personal AI platform has is, yes, you can train on your memory, you can share it, but it also has like built-in chats and lounges to be able to share your AI in a direct messaging setting or in a community setting. So one of the advantages is it's almost like a AI world where pretty much all your team's AI or your AI is in there, and you can communicate with each other and leverage each other's AI and their knowledge and augment each other on an ongoing basis. AI friends. So AI friends, you will find them in the Discover. These are specific experts within the personal AI platform, where in the future, individual people and their AIs can be made discoverable as well. So we're trying to essentially extract more value of everybody's AI beyond their teams by being able to discover them. So if you do talk to one of the AI friends, or if you do talk to like Suman AI or other AIs, you are likely having these conversations and telling your opinions and your debate. You can use them and add it to your memory as well along, because that's the whole point of anything that goes out, if I can capture it to my memory, then the model gets better. If AI agrees in some cases, like for example, ChatGPT, you can edit, you can personalize, and you can add. So let's look at one example. In this case, I asked ChatGPT, AI friend, tell me everything about retinitis pigmentosa, which I don't have much information about. It got me, but it relates to me because in my previous company, Ira, it was about making an impact to people who, had issue with retinitis pigmentosa. So now I can then talk to my AI. It's like, hey, tell me about IRA impact on healthcare, specifically for those with issues with retinitis pigmentosa. Because then it takes the problem, it takes the impact, and it takes the use cases and puts it together that makes meaningfully sense, which, as a human, I could do it as well. Train with the full context, make it a habit in everyday conversations, right? It works better in the long run. Try to avoid this and that references. Try to replace that this and that with actual context, so that way it makes meaningful, for whatever things that you're typing. Here is an example. Starting from left to right, Sharon is asking me, telling me something which I am not aware of. There are countries in the world where people eat guinea pigs. And this information is coming from my Copilot, right? This is general because this is the first time I'm anything, and you can see that 33%. So what I do is I click edit, and I make it personal by adding my own opinion. It's probably okay, just like it's okay for Americans to eat cows, but in India it's a sacred animal. So every culture is different. So that's a memory that I added. I send it to Sharon. She gets my response back. But I also swipe right again to add to the memory. Now, once I add to the memory, next time, I don't know when, whenever the similar context arrives, it does pick up that piece of my opinion, about that topic. So that's the beauty, meaning you may not know where it will reuse information, but eventually, as long as it's in the memory, it becomes more and more you. So yeah, so I think the key is invest in your memory and your model becomes you over a period of time. There is a next webinar that we are planning that will be everyday applications, how to fast track to the memory and to the launch. We'll also talk a little bit about like apps, like the UI and the integrations, like such as SMS and Gmail and things of that nature. We'll do that next Friday. So that way, that will be the 3-part webinar series. And hopefully this will be helpful for everybody, to basically build their own model, like own it, deploy it, and use it on a day-to-day basis. You can also join my lounge and you can ask any questions or any topics that I covered today. And my memory is normally up to date and try to keep it up to date. So question and answer time. Sorry for the long run, but it's a lot of information, but the one that we will share will have even more step-by-step detail. But the intention is to, do a lot of education, because we have found people who figure it out are really happy, and they go to like a lot of places. We see around 90 minutes to 120 minutes on people who has north of 1,000 memories. So there you go. That's the North Star. Any idea if anyone using personal AI in Kenya? I have a potential client there. I don't know, but we can look up. Susan, you can send me a direct message in personal AI, and then, but I don't see a reason why not. David says, if the AI answers incorrectly, is it best to edit the response or correct the response and respond in chat? I would say edit the response has a higher reinforcement learning because it does associate with the input context as well, such as the question. However, you can still add additional information for that question as a separate memory. It doesn't have to always associate with the input question. So yeah, the more input question and answer style, definitely it is more grounded, as if you know what those are. If you don't know what those are, then it's just a memory. Tobin says, are you familiar with thebrain.com? Actually, I'm not. I would look it up once I have an opportunity. Let me know what ideas you have, if we can collaborate. Do you believe the future of this tech is designed to be integrated in our minds? Google VR glasses with access to personal AI. In our mind, I am not sure. It probably takes another 15, 20 years to get to like a HCI that is reasonably evolved with the Elon Musk company, the Neuralink. But Google VR glasses, Apple glasses, the watches, the form factor of smart speakers. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I could imagine, my dad will be in my smart speaker that I can talk to, and my, daughters can talk to, pretty much all the time. There is a Zapier Alexa integration that I've kind of already done, but we need to just make it useful for easier for other people. My grandfather wrote about 20 books of good length and quality. Can I simply add the EPUB files to the memory stack? EPUB files. Sharon, can you help me with that?
The answer is right now we cannot, but there is probably a quite simple support for that to happen. So feel free to add it to roadmap.personal.ai. We can try to make that happen for you.
Yeah, I'm assuming there must be converters. So maybe we can. I've never had the reason, but maybe we can try to find a converter for you and see which one works best. Luis, maybe we can also cover that in webinar 3, because webinar 3 is also about uploading books, uploading different kinds of formats. We'll probably be able to answer that. Thank you, Anonymous Attendee. Webinar helpful. How do you train your AI on day-to-day notes, journals, and what is the best way? Message board is the best way. For day-to-day notes, use hashtags, notes, I literally have a launch that says my notes, and I can set my persona in the launch as well. So anything that I add to the memory from within the launch, it goes to a specific persona. It goes back to like, how do you plan your initial my AI? But you can the input be multimodal? Video, audio, text will all be converted to text at this time. The memory units that personal language model uses does have multimodal, but the AI is not plugged into or trained on image data as of yet. So in the future, you can imagine being able to ask questions such as, generate or give me a photo, of my 5-year-old daughter from so-and-so date when I'm in the, garden. So eventually, yes, but right now, no, but the memory, yes. The personal models improve. Will I get more value out of my memory stack? The more memory, the more model improves, the more self-contained it will become. The less dependency on anything else, such as a LLM, potentially also being able to run on your self-contained device, such as a phone or computer. So yes, it'll likely take some time, but once you get to 1,000 memories, you will see immediate value and output. 1,000 is just like a big number, but even with 100 memories for simple use cases, it's pretty good. Richard says, "Wow, hey, when a document you upload is split into a block, is it separated when you recall? What's the relationship?" Sharon, you want to take that?
Yeah, so technically they're chunks, but they are also linked to your document, which can be referred to. If you type a colon, you will see the list of documents that you have injected. And if you use the colon, it actually tries to link together everything that you're trying to ask. So it is separate, but it's also together. Yeah.
Cool. And we should cover some of those examples as well in the application in the third webinar. Why, with my business, how can I make an AI for each employee and have it all fed into the master company own AI? Yeah, so that's the business persona that I was showing in the deck. When we send the deck out, you can essentially use it as a framework and plan it out. You can have your brand AI and an employee AI and define what roles they will play. And essentially they can take the ownership of feeding the data in for that persona. So yeah, we can have like an explicit document about it for step by step. Hashtags, how to and best use them. Yes, I actually had like more slides on more details, but we thought it was too much detail for one session. So we'll send you the deck with structured information for that detail, hashtags and colon use. Crystal, thank you. I'm reading your message. Diversity and AI persona for board of directors, startups, etc. Have you considered building AI personas of public figures such as US Supreme Court justice based on their rulings? First question, at the end of the day, the diversity is based on the memory, but one of the newer things that is coming up that Sharon is working on is you can actually set a directive to the persona as well. We don't know when that will be live, but since you asked, I thought I would mention it. So that's a good way to go about setting like a directive to a persona that will assist alongside with your memory that goes in it. Public figures, not without their consent. We are very like a principally driven company, so we don't want to do things just for the reasons of doing it. So if you do have authorization or people who would be interested to work with us and get a US Supreme Court Justice AI, we will work with them and get going. But for MLK and Gandhi, maybe, but we haven't had time to kind of pull together the data. There are some friends, like AI friends, that we have built ourselves for helping general people who are not coming to train their AI as much as get value out of the AIs that exist, rather than going to multiple different LLM companies. So I think that's a good idea. We should probably use it and leverage it. If you could input one note, absolutely. I think one of the challenges that we are facing right now is, there are so many disparate like sources of the data, and believe me, platform doesn't make it easier for us to just simply take the data and push it in. So there's almost always a transformer that is needed. To scale that, one thing that we are doing, Clayton, is like open sourcing our stack transformers and API as well, so that way at least we can get some help from the community to create these plugins. No, thank you. What do you think about eventual inputs from previous generations through tuning quizzes? For example, daily text our parents asking. So conversational text information to go into the training is absolutely possible even today. What is challenging is extracting the conversational text from the existing systems, such as iMessage or like other systems. So when we make that easier, the language model already works. For that use case. So it's more about like data problem, less about like the language model itself. Oh yeah, totally. Even like right now, if you simply take Noah's financial habits, or if you do have some information around it, just push it to the memory and then attach the name to that memory. And of course you can ask such questions, and even you can like combine that and try to fetch, okay, given this such financial habits, what are the some general suggestions that we have, like almost like a personalized I guess prompt, if you will. When you use hashtag and colon for data input, do you also use it for recall? Yes. The more hashtags, I would suggest use as many hashtags as possible as necessary for the input. For the output, the more hashtags that you use, the narrower the context will become. So that means you are trying to ground more. But if it is too narrow, then it may not construct a good response for you as well. So it depends on understanding your AI better for yourself. Build custom models so I don't have to train from scratch. Yes, we have. Obviously, that's like a business elevate pricing model that we do have. So we're trying to scale that business at least as a greater revenue stream. So if you want to build custom models, let us know. That will be even helpful to the company to faster revenue. What if I want to use personal AI with an open source LLM like Llama and GPT? I don't want anything going through open API. Sharon?
I was just typing the response. But thanks for the question. So for the next, in probably 2 weeks of time, we'll be introducing a feature where you can switch your base back off LLM. So you can choose everything from Llama to Cloud to OpenAI models. So we'll be introducing that very soon.
Christopher, I actually, we actually do have that within this deck, the greater illustration, but it just got so detailed, we put it in the appendix. So when we share the deck, you should have it all, the further illustration of hashtags and colons. I was imagining that we will never be able to get through this and get through the questions. So for the fact that it is 9 minutes for us to have a conversation, it's actually nice. Any other questions? Noah says, is there a possibility of backing up the data for the future applications? Power of attorney making decisions. Yes. So there is a download memory and model functionality that we have to do. So I think we will get to it eventually, at least after, next round of effort and resources and roadmap. But totally, the terms of service already promise that, the memory is yours, the model is yours, you can put it in the trust as well. So we just got to build tools to make it easier for you. Appreciate the invite. Not okay. Yeah, please share. We are we are early in the sense of like PR long, but we've been in existence for 3 years, except that it just took us time to be able to build this, cost-effective, scalable, user control models without compromising on enough data ownership and the quality and everything else. Thank you, Clayton. Cool. We will ship the decks hopefully by the end of this day, and we'll follow up through for webinar 3, which we can have a little bit more fun with it because it will be all about application and users out in the wild as well. So we'll work on it, and we'll see you in a week. Thank you all. Oh, by the way, there is a launch link. Here you go. Thank you, everybody.